Williams' diaries record he had mused on suicide from his earliest days, but in the last few months of his life, the idea of putting an end to his suffering began to obsess him.
What do you mean, like, say, you'd want to kill yourself or something like that?
Oh, yes, I put stuff like down about suicide and how one would go about it, what would be the best method and all that kind of thing, you know. Looking back on it, of course, it's often, you know, quite amusing.
Why do you think you want to kill yourself?
Well, one would think it at the time because of extremely low state of morale. And one actually does write something down which is practical in terms of how one thinks one should go about it.
Counted my capsules of poison, and I've got over 30, so there should be enough to kill me. Just have to work out the time and the place.
A fortnight before he died, I saw him outside Broadcasting House, and we stood on a traffic island. He was very distressed, and he looked sort of grey, and Kenneth's face in repose sometimes was an incredibly tragic face. And he would go very sallow, and I remember thinking, I was so preoccupied with my own things, and I remember thinking, oh, I should ring him, but I didn't.
On March 21st, 1988, Williams' diaries reveal that he attempted an overdose, but after taking 2 barbiturates, couldn't go through with it. On April 14th, he wrote what was to be his final entry in his diary.
Had meal with Lou at 5:30. Saw the news, watched the dreary saga of murder and mayhem. By 6:30, pain in the back was pulsating as it's never done before. So this, plus the stomach trouble, combines to torture me. Oh, what's the bloody point?
The next day, Louis went into her son's flat and found him dead in his bed.
The comedy actor Kenneth Williams has died at the age of 62. He was found dead at his flat in North London this morning.
He died from an overdose of barbiturates, causing much speculation in the press. But the coroner couldn't be sure it wasn't an accident and recorded an open verdict.
It was, if you like, I think a generous verdict. Probably there was doubt in their minds and they just went for the verdict that was the most neutral. It's possible when you've taken a lot of alcohol that you take a lot of pills, I suppose, by mistake. This has happened, but I'm sure it didn't happen to him. This was a perfectly willed act, which he'd contemplated several times at different stages over the weeks beforehand.
I believe that he took his life. That is what I believe. I don't know that for sure, but I believe so. He could not find anything worthy in himself at all. He felt that his life was dross.
At the end of the day, he died, I think, of frustration, really. Sexual, social, theatrical, professional. He just wasn't doing what he wanted to do.
Left neatly stacked in Williams' bookcase was his final legacy. The 41 volumes that documented his innermost thoughts about himself and everyone who came into his orbit, candid and uncensored.
You say you're not going to want them published after your death. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I'd have thought you might have thought you'd want your diaries published after your death.
Oh, I see. Oh, after death?
Yes.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you meant published during lifetime.
Oh, no.
Oh, after death. Yes, one wouldn't mind that at all.
Wouldn't you worry about being unkind or catty?
Well, I wouldn't care at all then. One would be out of the way. I wouldn't mind it. And then saying, oh, well, he was a rotter, to say a nasty thing like that. I wouldn't mind at all if I was out of the way. That's fine.
He knew that he'd been a strange and somewhat dislocated personality all his life. Since a child, he'd known that. And he'd never managed quite to puzzle it out for himself. But I think he wanted to leave the evidence so that it was there on the table, literally on the table, for us to see and sort out.
C'est la vie, ma crêpes.
I feel sad for him that his life wasn't as happy for him as he made it for all of us. Because as soon as you saw him, as soon as you heard him, your heart lifted, you broke into a smile, and sometimes into a belly laugh. He had the gift of creating laughter, but he didn't have the gift of creating it for himself.
lingerie et de toilette, gauloise cigarette, entourage ma crêpe Suzette.
Bye-bye, and thank you ever so much. It's been really wonderful for you to have me.